And now, allow me to welcome and help me welcome Julie Andrews.
Hello. How lovely to see such a great crowd. I just got here, so I hope you enjoyed it.
Did you enjoy the film?
It was great fun to make.
It was it was inspired by a 1933 German film.
Yeah, a
right?
German film called Victor und Victoria with a K. Am I talking too loud? I see, I have to hold that down here. Blake went to see the German film. He was asked by his agent, I think.
Oh, okay. Nobody takes picture, please.
That's kind of you, thanks. And Blake came home having seen the German film. I think the German film was written or directed by the same man that did the original Some Like It Hot. If you think about it, there's a very similar theme to both of them.
Yeah.
Schunzul, is that his name?
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, Blake saw the German film and said, my God, I've got a great take on that, because in the German film there was not a hint of any of the love interests or the homosexuality or anything like that. And so Blake decided to just open it up, and that's what he did.
What was your first thought when he asked you to play a woman that impersonates a man who impersonates a woman?
I said, almost verbatim, I said, darling, no one is ever going to believe I don't think that I'm a guy. How do I act like a guy? And he said, honey, you don't worry. He said, the audience within the film, it's built in. I mean, he wrote it, from scratch. They believe in the movie that they're seeing a guy. Therefore, the audience in the cinema will go along with that. And I thought, oh, okay, I think we can manage.
But you did in the film an extraordinary work on body language. I mean, you really,
Nice of you. Thank
yeah. I mean, it changes. Can you describe how did you find?
Well, I watched a lot of guys, which is a very nice thing to do. So, and I noticed that ladies were they use their hands and a lot of facial expressions and things like that. Men mostly either just sit like that, or if they cross their knees, it's very easy, hands in pockets. And I really studied Robert Preston and Jimmy Garner. And there was a wonderful day when I was in my tuxedo as a guy. And normally when I would come on the set or I'd go up to chat to them, everybody would be very deferential. There's a lady around and everything. But they were all talking with the director of photography and everything else. And I sauntered up in my man's attire and just stood like the guys. And they never budged or acknowledged or anything. And I thought, oh, I think they're getting it. Or I've gotten it, one of the two. It was very nice. But if I could digress 1 second, Blake had these wonderful ways of making something real for me in some ways. When we made the movie 10 together, I said Dudley Moore, who was so wonderful in it, is a tiny guy. And he was a second choice because the original man that was going to do it fell through. And Blake suddenly got the idea that Dudley would be great for it. And of course he was. And I said, again, Blake, would you rather recast me? Because Dudley's going to be so great. And he's so short. Won't it look, do you need to put him on a box or me down, shoot me from the knees up or something? And he said, honey, think of all the guys that you found really, really attractive that are really quite short. It's what's in here that you're attracted to in terms of Dudley's character. And when you get that kind of information, everything else goes away.
You also worked on the voice, the lower, the higher.
I tried. I don't think I succeeded completely, but I did try. I I pitched my own speaking voice as low as I could, but it still sounds pretty high to me. But and then I just thought that as a freak entertainer, as a drag entertainer, maybe that guy would have a double octave voice or whatever. So when I go all the way up to the high note, it doesn't matter, you know.
The sexual politics of the film feel really current today. They feel really
more
current.
So than ever. Yeah.
40 years ago must have been incredibly subversive.
It was the sort of, I think, either the first or the forerunner anyway of just opening everything up, which we've got today, which is lovely. And it's really, the movie's just all about love and loving each other. And that's really all one can say. It doesn't matter about any of it. It's great fun movie. I just loved doing it. It wasn't an easy shoot. You know, did any of you guess, well, you probably did, that it was shot within 2 sound stages? We never went outdoors at all in that movie, and not once. And Blake tried to do research in Paris because, of course, it's set in Paris. And he couldn't find 1935 or 34, whatever the date is, of the movie. He couldn't find anything that looked not modern. There were aerials and television antennas and God knows what. And he couldn't find a place anywhere where the roofs looked real and so on. So he went to Pinewood Studios, and they have the James Bond huge studio there, joined by one other huge studio beyond it. And the guys opened the double doors, so we had 2 vast studios, and the whole set of Paris and everything else was built inside. And then the thing that I found so charming, our director of photography on the first day of shooting came up to me, and I knew him, and he's a lovely guy. He's no longer with us, but he said, I'm thinking that it takes place in the winter and you see the snow. That can be very blue and very cold in terms of reflections and things like that. He said, see, and he pulled out a whole sheaf of postcards of Montmartre done by Utrillo, the painter. And he said, see how he got all the warmth in these? That's what I'd like to emulate. So he put up, you know, wonderful red neon signs and orange here, and it looked cold, but it gave a very warm feeling to the city. And I was so impressed by that man's thinking and wondering how he could warm up a cold winter. It's just those kind of things that make you really, really appreciate what they do.
And I think, as you were saying before, the fact that it was shot in a soundstage and not outdoor makes the film feel very intimate.
Yeah, it did. It feels more intimate because you're never really outside. So the film has when you're telling the story, it has an intimacy about it. Yeah.
Yeah. And it plays to the aspect of the farce.
Obviously, we had a couple of sidebar studios for like the bedroom scene, but the entire way up one side was like downtown Paris, and the other side was sort of uptown Paris, depending which way Blake was shooting and what he needed. And the streets were cobblestone, and you could spray them with water, make gutters run away and things like that. So it was beautifully done, but gosh, it was worth it. And it was very lucky that you couldn't find a good spot in Paris.
Another great collaborators of Blake Edwards is Henry Mancini, of course.
Yes.
And here he worked closely with you because of the the songs and the music.
Yes. Oh gosh, he was a lovely guy, a great friend of Blake's. Many years before Blake and I even met, and he was adorable. He loved kids and would come over and kneel down and talk with my babies, and he would call me long distance sometimes and say, I'd hear a great fussing with a microphone like this one, but I'd hear a lot of noise, and he'd say, Jules, got a minute? And he said, I want to play you a song or something, and vaguely I'd hear the outline of some song, and that he was writing for one of the films that we did together. But he was adorable man and funny. No wonder he and Blake got on so well.
Another thing of the film that the film lays on is the chemistry between you and Jace Garner. This wasn't the first time you two had worked together.
No, we did a film together. The first film we ever did was a film called The Americanization of Emily. And it's quite a classic. Well, you know probably better than anybody, but it is a classic these days. It was written by Paddy Chayefsky, who's a wonderful, wonderful writer, playwright, screenwriter as well. And it was so compelling, and it's about the folly of war and how we put our generals and our soldiers up on a pedestal and laud them to high heaven when they've been slaughtered all over the place. It's about a guy who is a complete coward and tries to get out of going to war and ends up being the supposed first dead man on Omaha Beach. And it is a serious film, but it's also very funny. And a series of circumstances, and I played Jimmy Garner's girlfriend. So that was when we first met, and almost the first thing we shot in The Americanization of Emily was a love scene. Now, this is only the second movie I'd ever made in my life. First one was Mary Poppins, and there wasn't much love and kissing in that one. So here I was rolling around on a bed with Jimmy Garner most of the afternoon and getting close-ups and now the other way and a reverse and so on. And I was thinking, well, I don't know how ladies are supposed to do this. Do they kiss properly, or do they just touch lips, or what do they do? So Mr. Garner very kindly showed me what was expected, and I have to tell you, it was rather delicious. Having said that, I kept saying to myself, but I'm going to be utterly professional about this, and I'm not going to let it, touch me in any way. And it took most of the afternoon to finish that love scene. And when they said, okay, cut, break, that's it, I got up off the bed and my knees buckled beneath me. And I think Jimmy rather enjoyed it too. But the thing is, we loved each other dearly. We never got together in any way. We were both married and very happily so. But he became a dear friend, and then we did a television show together. That might be, we should talk about.
Retrospective.
Yeah.
I was thinking about it.
Yeah, it's a sweet movie. And then, made for television, and then this one. So by the time we got to make this one, we were easy with each other and loving working together again. Yeah. He's no longer with us, sadly. But, the one thing that Blake did say about Jimmy, and he said it during the making of this film. He said, Jimmy's not only a great actor, he's a great reactor. And if you think about it, he makes the movie by his expressions and the stunned thing when he realizes that I'm a guy. And I think he did it very, very, very well.
And the scene in the bathroom when he actually the whole, it's true, it's these role reactions, and sometimes we don't see what he's looking at. That really, really smart. This was your fifth film with Blake, fourth or fifth, and
fifth, I think. There
yeah.
were about 3 after that. Yeah. We made 7 altogether, I think, movies together.
What can you describe a little bit about the way you were working together? Was he, when he was writing, especially if he was writing a part for you, would he talk to you about it?
Eventually he would. He was always very preoccupied and grumpy and didn't want interruptions when he was writing the scripts. But this one seemed to be a little easier for him than most. He did love it. And he had such a bead on it in his head as the way he wanted it to be. But we would not dare to interrupt him when he was beginning to write. And even at dinner, the kids would say, "You all right, Dad?" "Kids, I'm writing." And of course, the mind was way far away somewhere else. But his techniques on the set and things like that were wonderful. I had a hard time throwing a punch, but...
that looked pretty effective to me.
Well, a lovely stunt man came and worked with me, And I can't throw a ball. I mean, if I throw a ball, I fall flat on my backside, and I mean it. So I did have to do some work on that.
I'm going to open it to the audience for a few questions. So who has a question, raise their hand. Oh, there is one right there.
What was it like doing the show, the Broadway show of Victoria?
Oh, it was a joy. It was, was it 30 or 40 years since I'd been on Broadway myself. And the day we opened, I got very tearful. And I said to Blake, yeah, you know, I don't know why, but I'm feeling terribly nervous and tearful. And he looked at me and he said, well, did you expect to feel anything else tonight? Because it was a long time between shows. But the company and the delight of that show it was a joy. And we had some big setbacks because Henry Mancini passed away just toward the end of his writing the songs, more songs for it. And then one of our wonderful orchestrators also passed. And then Blake opened it up for the theater, and he wished very much, the one thing we did do that he was happy about was to do that Norma, the wonderful part played by
Leslie Ann Warren.
That's right. He wrote in the show on Broadway, he wrote in that she asked me to dance, and because I was in front of the James Garner character, I decided to try to do it. And the muddle of who leads who when I'm really a girl and I'm trying to be a guy and all of that. And she keeps trying to touch me in slightly unmentionable places, and I'm just avoiding it by a second. And he wished he'd been able to do that in this film, and he regretted that he hadn't thought of it until later.
There was a question here.
In the movie, when you hit that high note and the glass breaks, how did they make the glass explode? Did they put explosives on it or something?
Do you know, I don't know. I really don't. I've known singers that can do that. I've never been able to do it, but I guess they must put some explosive right in the center of it or whatever, and then a sound effect makes it very effective. Because it could have been a plastic glass, I don't know. What do you think they would have done?
I think they must have had a little explosive. I mean, to me, the one with the not the funambulist, the equilibrist, I guess, on the desk with the champagne bottle.
Oh, that's great!
That's amazing.
That was an odd one too. Yeah. That was fun with that guy.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh,
that's really something. Right here. Hold on, it's bringing you the mic. Yeah.
Hi. Sorry, I really want to start this by congratulating you for the AFI. I was like honored enough to be there. But you really have just such a long...
I have lived a very long time.
Not that you have such just an amazing career. Like somebody think.
Thank you. I've been one of the luckiest ladies in the world because whatever one thing led to another, and I would be in the right place or something like that at the right time.
You worked hard.
Stunned.
For it.
Oh, thank you.
Yes.
It was a wonderful award, though, the other night. It was only last week, and oh my gosh, it was huge. But they taped it, and I'm glad they did because I wouldn't have believed it otherwise. But
it was great.
actually, the brochure was even, I think, better than the evening because it listed every single radio show, television show, film, theatrical thing that I've done. And I kept thinking, wow, I really did do quite a lot, I guess.
I think to what she said, you know, you work very hard. There is a line at the beginning of the film when you at the audition where you say, well, there are certain things that if you really practice, practice make perfect. Yes. And it feels that in your work there is such a respect for practice and for just that detail that the practice gives you.
Discipline, really, and that was taught to me by my mostly by my singing teacher and to a certain extent by my mum, who was in the theatre business as well. My parents were in vaudeville in the days in England when vaudeville was just beginning to die. And we toured endlessly around as an act. And then when circumstances sort of laid us by the wayside, and my stepfather, who hoped to teach me to sing, he passed me on to his very fine singing teacher. And she had, and I would then go out on my own all over England, and it was very hard work. And I was so prim and proper, and but my singing teacher did say one thing that stuck with me all my life. And she said, "Julie, just remember, the amateur works until he gets something right. The professional works until he can't go wrong." And it's not exactly true because you go wrong all the time, but it does set a standard by which to think about what it is you do, and do you want to be just enjoying it, or do you want to be really, really professional? And all I know is that my parents also, and my singing teacher, that lovely lady, would, everything, don't you dare complain. And they used to smoke like chimneys in the theatres in those days, and it would spiral down the spotlight onto the stage. Don't you choke or complain or do anything, you know. I guess it was the way I was raised as well, but there was a kind of work ethic that was obvious, I guess, that I saw and wanted to emulate.
It's in the films. and the joy of making them.
Well, it is a joy. And how lucky can I get to do it with my husband?
Besides being a brilliant actress, when the part came to you from Bridgerton and to be that voice, how long did it take you to make the decision to do that?
Quite a while, but the thing that was very tempting about it is I didn't have to get into hair or makeup or anything. I could just go to a microphone and play and practice. It felt like an intriguing idea, and all I could think of was Maggie Smith, who's a great friend. I kept thinking, well, she should really be doing this. She did Downton Abbey so well, and it's sort of an approximation of that. But I had to think a little bit about what the voice would be, and it's kind of fun to do that kind of work. It's very different from film. They ask you for every kind of interpretation you can give, and then they decide with voiceovers what it is they'd like to use. So that in Despicable Me, for instance, when I do Gru's mum, which is the worst character I've ever done in my life, they just ask you to say this more angrily, say this with disdain, say it kindly, say it with laughter. I mean, they ask for everything, and you just work very hard vocally. That's the secret to it, I think.
Is it hard? You're such a wonderfully physical actress. Ooh. And is it hard to just block everything and
I think it is. It's great joy when you're doing it and it might be going right. When it's not going right, it's very hard. I did have a lot of problems on the movie because we were not living in England, but we got an apartment there, and our whole family was there. And my two babies, who were adopted children, their nanny had just decided that she would leave as I began the movie. And it was mayhem in the house. I mean, I've got little girls that were dying to be with mummy, supposed mummy anyway, and they had to be patient, and I only worried about them. And going home at night, I didn't do my homework as much as I would have liked to in terms of learning my lines and things like that. But thanks to Blake, I think we got by. He makes movie sets a joy. People quite often from other movies, if they hear that there's a Blake Edwards movie going to be shooting, they'll ask, can we get on the movie? And because we hear it's always fun. And he made it always easy. And yet he hated any gimmicky camera work. He couldn't bear it. if you shot through a keyhole for no reason, if you get what I'm saying. And he said, these young kids, what are they doing? You know, the ego of showing how clever you are. You just need to put the camera and be as simple as you can. And in Los Angeles or in Hollywood, there were many, many bad guys that decided they knew better than Blake how to cut a movie and so on. Didn't shoot it, mind you. They just said heads of studios and things. And Blake got very clever because if there's too much footage, they can play with it. And in the younger days for Blake, he didn't have the final cut permission. And a couple of his movies were completely butchered. And so he got very clever and started shooting with enormous economy only what he knew he was going to edit. And there wasn't anything else they could use to cut. So very clever of him, yeah.
There is one here.
Great questions these are. Oh.
Hi. I actually have a question in regards to this movie.
About what?
This particular movie, Victor Victoria.
Oh, yes.
It was obviously, it's become an iconic film for the LGBTQ community. And I was just wondering, obviously you can't know how a film's going to turn out, you can't know the impact it's going to be, but
No.
did you feel a certain sort of responsibility and like pressure to portray this relationship in such a way?
To be truthful, I don't honestly remember that we had much concern about it at all. The film was beautifully received in all the great cosmopolitan cities like New York, Chicago, LA, San Francisco, but across the country, I think it wasn't as huge. There must have been some bigotry about it or something like that. But it didn't really occur to us because, as I said, how could you be offended? It's all about loving people and being kind to people and funny and real. And it didn't feel like we were doing anything hugely. Now we realize that we did, but it didn't feel like it at the time.
I think, as I was trying to say, I'll get to you to the next question. As I was trying to say at the beginning, the combination of fun and sexiness and the depth of the acceptance of humanity is quite a difficult balance, and this is so perfect.
I think he did that in quite a number of his films, actually, in one way or another. There were several movies where he played with the ideas. A couple that I wasn't in, but this was certainly one of the first ones where he began to experiment with those ideas. Yeah.
Okay, she's just been waiting for. Yes, here.
This poor guy is tearing around with a very long microphone. That's actually my grandson. It is. Hey, that's my Sam, or her Sam.
Hi, I just wanted to know, how long did it take to film?
I don't remember now. Probably the usual 12 weeks, 16 weeks. There's a lot of pre-production. The actual filming probably took about 12 weeks. It helped that it was all in one place. There was no location shooting, of course. I'd say that was about it, 10 or 12 weeks. And then there's an enormous amount of this pre-production, then they shoot the film, and then there's post-production when you balance sound and you go in. The artists are asked to go into a studio and pick up if there was an airplane overhead or it got picked up or somebody touched a microphone or something like that. It's hugely disturbing if it's left in the film. So all the sound is tracked left to right as you're watching it. And it's wonderful work that they do. It takes hundreds of people to make a movie, doesn't it? Yeah. And it's a joy. They're wonderfully talented people. Yes.
Okay, we have one here. I think we have only time for a couple more.
Thank you. First, I personally want to thank you for all the joy and that you've brought to so many people around the world in various generations. And thank you for sharing your beautiful talent with all of us. And I'm wondering, throughout your career, is there a favorite role or a favorite film that you have?
Not really. They're so different for different reasons. But certainly one or two of them. I loved a film that we actually made much more reasonably than most films are made. Toward the end of his life, Blake said, I've always wanted to do a non-union movie just once. I'm allowed one in my life, he'd say. And we were sitting in the jacuzzi one day. He said, I know I'd like to shoot it here in our house. And I thought, oh, well, he has 6 ideas a day as a rule. So I could imagine it would just go by and pass. And 6 weeks later, we were shooting in our house. And I'd be making scrambled eggs for the company and the crew at 3 a.m. or when Blake and I would go to bed and they'd still be taking down the lights from our bedroom, go ahead, guys, we're just going to climb in anyway. And it was a great film to make. That and Emily that I just spoke about. And I loved making Thoroughly Modern Millie because it was so silly and a joy. Oh, God, there's so many stories, too, I could tell, but never mind. We'll do it another time.
Well, we're going to be showing those films, so please keep, stay on look at our website, and you'll find this. I think we have time for one, and it's going to go in the back because. There's a lady over there. Oh, okay, 2, one here and then one there. Yeah.
Hello, my name is Blaine Charles, and I've been an AIDS activist for most of my life, and I just want to say that I salute you and your husband for having the courage to produce this movie in the 80s when we were really fighting for our rights, for our visibility, and for freedom to love each other. So I just want to thank you from my heart to yours.
Thank you.
My question is, what was the deciding factor that Blake and you just chose to do this movie in the 80s?
I think he just fell in love with it when he saw the German version of it, which didn't have any of the innuendo in it at all. And he got a bead as to how it could be. And once he fixated on it, it just had to happen. And certain people really loved it, and it got made quite quickly. Other movies took 10 years to get made, and of Blake's, a movie called S.O.B., which castigated Hollywood and some of the bad guys, as I was referring to, that every studio loved it but wouldn't dare to take it and make it in case it represented them, It was quite a lovely feeling, just a little bit of naughtiness on our part, on his part, yeah.
And the very last one.
Go, Sam, go!
I would like to know, I'm sure the audience would like to know also, what was it like to be directed by your husband over so many films?
Well, it was lovely, except when we were doing a love scene, I was doing something with somebody else, and he'd say, "That's fine, darling, but I know you can do it better." Really. Sorry, Blake, I was being a bit circumspect. Well, go ahead, go on. It's true. It is a true story. But generally, we did some. I was so thrilled to be able to participate in some of the things that he came up with. He, in terms of film economy, we try, and there's one shot in this film too that you've just seen, and just bear with me for 1 second. We made a film called Darling Lily, which was an absolute flop, first film we ever made, and you'd think that would have been the kiss of death on a marriage, but we survived. And he devised, he said, I wonder, I'm quite good, used to be anyway, at lip syncing. You pre-record everything and then sing to playback so that the sound is as smooth as can be. And he devised a scene, which is the opening of Darling Lily, which I think, Giulia, and it is basically what most people call a sort of roundy round, but what it was, it started at the back of a theatre. You didn't know where I was, close up on the face. Then I walked across. I came down the side of the stage, and the camera turned and followed. I went across the front of the stage, so you saw the seats and the lighting, then went back up the other side, all in one take. Then I danced with the camera, and then back the other way, and then eventually made my way upstage and ended where I started. That required the cameraman to pull focus when I was nearer him or not. It required the people who were pushing and dollying the camera to get all the cables out of the way. I had to lip sync perfectly, hit marks without looking at them, and generally it took quite a while to pull it off. It took a full day of shooting, but when we had finished, it was the most satisfying feeling you can imagine, because we'd almost given birth to a very special idea on film, and to have been part of that for Blake and to pull it off for him and with him was really wonderful at the end of the day. And to a small extent, he does it when I sing at the piano. You start with me and the carnation in this film here, and the camera goes all the way around the side and all the way across the back and all the way around. But I didn't have to move in that shot. It was a smaller idea, but it's, if you can manage it and not, as you get nearer and nearer the end of the song, you think, oh, dear God, don't let me goof it now. But that's the kind of things that were great fun to do. And then if he wasn't pleased with something, it was like, oh, God, what can one do to really get what he wants? But he was never cruel. He was always most creatively. I mean, he loved his teams and they loved him, or everybody on the set loved him.
A lot of the film you did together they feel that there is a family warmth to the film.
Well, yeah, I mean, the
sort of
thing about the cameraman saying, I'd like to make this look like a Utrillo painting with the warmth, all of it, everybody. The other night at the AFI award, which was wonderful, I listed as many people that are never recognized other than those all too fast credits at the end of a movie, which you hardly get to see. But they're all contributing to everything. I mean, lighting and sound and hair and makeup and making costumes and designing the sets and building them and painting them and dubbing and editing. And it just goes on. And every member of that team, as a rule, is rooting to make it as good as it can possibly be. Then it's in the lap of the gods after that. If you're lucky, you may get a success, and sometimes you don't. But at least you gave it a try, and they did too.
There are one thing, and then we close because there is another show coming. But one thing about you, about
what are you showing tonight?
I don't know what's coming here. What's another show? Top Gun, I guess. Yeah.
Top Gun. Oh my God, I'm dying to see it. Yeah.
Well, one thing about you, which is so great, is how much you enjoy the making of the film. And now, because probably you were married to a film director,
yes,
and you lived the set life so intensely, and not a lot of actors and of this magnitude.
I watched a lot, probably because it was my husband.
Yeah. But then the understanding for the people, for the process, for the lights. I mean, it's really wonderful to hear talking.
Honestly, all art really. You maybe even exception of writing, maybe, or painting. It's all collaborative. If without those people, without them knowing their jobs, without them doing it well, we wouldn't be able to look good or do well as either. And I don't think enough people realize just how many people. I mean, there's a whole camera crew in front of what you just saw with catering trucks and God knows what. An absolute mess of people and wires and a tangle. But look at the miracle that they all contribute to and make. If you're lucky. Yeah.
Well, you are our miracle tonight here. Thank you so much, Julie.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you very much, everybody. Thank you.